All right, Frank, come on in.
Okay.
Thanks so much for joining us
Of
today
course.
and being our DaVinci Muse
Thanks
this
for
month.
having me.
Of course. So we kind of like to start with all the interviews with the same question, and that question is, if you could describe yourself in 3 words, what would those 3 words be?
Well, I definitely hope caring, because I always try to do as much stuff for people that seem to be nice, thoughtful people as I possibly can. And I would also think inquisitive, because I always feel like if there's something I can't figure out 100% or I don't fully know, I kind of won't stop till I have it figured out, especially like as a younger player with the saxophone on certain notes where I'd want them to growl or bust out and get some different nuances. Uh, you know, so many late night hours of practicing that. And I would say hopeful, because every day I get up excited to learn more things, work with new people, create more music, create more fun experiences, celebrate stuff like, Sunday. Unfortunately, I know this will be dated by the time people see it, but my friend Tony Fitzpatrick's memorial, playing at that and talking at that. So I definitely am very hopeful for great stuff for all of us for the future. And so I think those would be 3 good ones.
Sorry, those are 3 amazing answers. I love that. So for people who might not know you, what do you do?
Well, I hopefully do a lot of fun things, but I've made my living my whole life since I guess I was about 13 or 14 as a saxophone player. I also produce music and write a lot of music, but the saxophone has been my pretty much main thing my whole life.
Do you remember the first time you picked up a sax?
Yeah, our neighbor was selling one at a garage sale when I was about 7 or 8, probably second grade, and it was really like inspiring and awesome looking to me. So I was just drawn to it, and I asked my mom if we could buy it, and my mom's like, no. And but my neighbor did loan it to me for about 6 months. It didn't sell, and I started learning how to play it, and then my mom rented me one. So. But yeah, I just immediately was drawn to it.
Do you remember your first gig?
It was a coffee house in Elgin the same day that I was playing my elementary school. I was in 6th grade, Horizon Elementary School, for like a little mini dance. And I remember I got paid $10 to do each of them.
Nice.
So $20 for the day
Yeah.
for an 11 or 12-year-old. This would have been probably the late 80s. $20 doesn't go very far now,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But back then, you could actually like get some stuff with it.
Yeah, that's not bad for 11 years old. So where did your musical journey take you from there?
Well, I think at that point, because people were clapping, enjoying what I was doing, and I was mostly playing like 50s, 60s rock songs that I had learned, like Rockin' Robin, Jackson 5 was probably my favorite one, and a lot of friends that I went to elementary school with still mention that, and I became friends with a drummer named Rob Dubois, who was a good drummer, and I haven't seen him for a long, long time, but we, just as a sax and drums duo, I'd play the melodies, and he would, play the drum grooves, and people really liked it. So that was as like maybe an 11-year-old, 12-year-old. And then from there, it's just been beyond what I would have expected. I guess I've, played with so many kind of household name people and recorded with them, from, Seal, Beyonce, John Legend, Tony Bennett, Smashing Pumpkins at the Hollywood Bowl recently, and United Center here, Violent Femmes at Riot Fest, just kind of goes on and on. And then, of course, as a jazz person, having my residency last decade at Birdland in New York has been awesome. And playing this weekend at the Green Mill, where I've been playing since I was 14 or 15. So, yeah, just you know, series of #1 Billboard charting albums. The last one, blues one with Larry Bell, was #1 for a while in the Billboard blues charts. Tokyo #9, they did with Jimmy Chamberlain as well, that we recorded live in Japan. So just very thankful for all this stuff, and my life certainly would not be nearly as fun if it wasn't for music, and I would have to find some type of day job or something.
Yeah. What do you feel like you would be doing if you hadn't found music?
Well, I love painting, even though I'm not good at it. My grandpa was a really great visual artist.
Cool.
And I love driving cars. I don't know if I'd be good enough to be a race car driver, but we did just restore another little vintage Porsche from the early 70s, and I just, love cars.
Oh, beautiful.
And but I don't know if it had to be like a buckle down 9 to 5 situation. I have been fascinated at parts of law. I don't think I have the patience to be a lawyer as like a job, but I have given some lectures at DePaul Law School and a few others, just about a patent I had granted. My finger was cut off and reattached, and I developed a keyboard attachment, which was mostly because I wasn't able to play at the level I wanted to for about a year, and this kind of let me do some keyboard parts as well as some sax parts, and was kind of a good stopgap measure until I was able to get all my chops back. But so people found that interesting, and Yamaha ended up acquiring it from me, and so just kind of some of the legal ins and outs of that I found pretty fascinating.
Cool.
But it was also, I then realized it's because it was something that was really important to me, and if you were actually reading through all these pages of stuff for everyone all day long, it'd probably be rough.
Yeah.
So I'm just glad the saxophone stuff worked out.
Yeah. Can you go in more depth about, if you don't mind, talking about your finger and how that happened?
Well, because I liked cars, and I was only 16 at the time, I had restored a Volkswagen Beetle and a Volkswagen Carmen Ghia, and they used to be very inexpensive back then, and I started when I was 14 on the Beetle, but it wasn't running well, and it was in the winter, and I had gotten asked to play at the Grammys, which was a big honor for me, and I thought I could get it to O'Hare Airport, and I couldn't, and I was trying to get oil in it, the engine was sputtering, and I didn't realize, but the generator belt goes like this while I was reaching for a dipstick, and literally just sucked my finger off. And luckily I had leather gloves on, and I pulled the glove off, and the finger was still in it. So, but thankfully the paramedics, they packaged it up well, and the surgeon, his name was Damien Grass, and we did become friends. I've lost touch with him, unfortunately, but him and his family were really cool, and he had to take parts out of my thumb and kind of reconstruct it, but it works great. I don't have a lot of feeling in it, so I've had to have a couple keys on my saxophone modified. Yamaha for 25 years has been making my saxophone, and they take off the high F sharp key that's easy to bump there when you're playing the regular F sharp key for me, and it's been fine. Sometimes weather bugs it sometimes, but for the most part, I don't think it's hindered my career, except for those couple years. Thankfully, I did get to play at the Grammys the next year, and I was playing regularly with drummer Louis Belson, and he recommended me to Tony Bennett, who was a longtime friend, and I got to play on his Here's the Ladies recording and some of the tour of that with Tony, so that was nice. And that really helped launch my career kind of going into my college years. And so there's just never been a shortage of gigs. This month, we're in Sardinia, London, Barcelona, 8 shows at Black Cat in San Francisco, 2 at Berlin in New York, Pinehurst in North Carolina a couple days ago, and came back for Tony Fitzpatrick's memorial, and then we'll do the Green Mill this weekend. So as a leader, to be constantly touring and doing 15 shows a month and stuff, really with travel days you can't do more. Plus, still doing interviews like we're doing today and fun things. And I did quite a few radio and TV interviews this week. So I try to do some clinics and educational things for Yamaha or Jody Jazz or D'Addario or one of my other endorsers. And, so yeah, it's packing in a lot of stuff. But I guess that's how you go from being 18 to 48 where I am now. Like that, 30 years went by like nobody's business. So.
Yeah, that's great. You were mentioning all the amazing places you've played. What have been some of your favorite countries that you've played in?
Oh, well, I feel like Japan is probably my very favorite. And everyone there, no matter what city I'm in, so nice, so respectful, love music, like to take time to meet everybody afterwards. And usually they'll line up and do a meet and greet, which I wasn't used to the first time I played there, 20 some years ago. But I just, I love it. Anytime I get to go to Japan, I'm happy. And France, same thing. Just, my wife and I got engaged in Paris 20 years ago, and it's just like one of my very favorite cities. Great wine. They make the saxophone reeds there. I've done so many festivals. Just love to, every year get to go to Sunset Club in Paris to play. My friend Manu has a music school in Royan, and I am the godfather of the music school, or
awesome.
the dedicated part of it to me, which I really appreciate. So hopefully getting to go back more regularly. So anytime I play in France, so fun. I love all of Europe, obviously, but those, I would say France and Japan, I've never had a dull moment there.
I've heard that in jazz, in Japan, the crowd reacts very differently than in other countries.
Yeah, I would say in some ways people are a little more subdued until the end of the song, then everyone goes crazy, which I really like. That happens though everywhere at times, but I really I really appreciate the crowds in Japan very much, and how they treat the band, especially because sometimes you've had like a 24-hour day just trying to get there, and then you're playing shows and you're already kind of beat, and then they energize you and you play that much better, and the good like loving vibes to me mean a lot. So, but everywhere in Europe that that I've ever played, the audience has been so great. But also, United States, Canada, Vancouver, Toronto have always been great. San Francisco was wonderful. The Hollywood Bowl, this was as a sideman, obviously, being a featured guest for the Smashing Pumpkins. Willow Smith and I were the featured guests that day, and that ended out their tour. But just people are just like, going nuts. Granted, that's a rock setting, not a jazz setting. But, I did like a 7 or 8 minute, jazz type solo. Billy Corgan was like, hey, let's do this. And my friend Jimmy Chamberlain on the drums was like, hey, let's try that. So it was definitely jazz infused and just super fun. So
that's awesome.
I think audiences throughout the whole world are really great, because I think music speaks to everybody, and everyone that has passion in their soul, music is going to speak to. And hopefully it's resonating in a way that everybody likes. I also like to play some pretty stuff here and there, but I like to keep my music energetic and upbeat, because I like to feel like that energy is coming from me to others and hopefully reciprocating back. So I don't feel my style of jazz is maybe as stuffy as some other people. So I feel like I get a little bit more of the rock crowd attitude at times, even though it's a jazz concert.
That's great. Yeah, you've talked about some amazing gigs that you've played. I'd love to hear if you have a story of maybe a not so amazing gig, or maybe is there a time that you bombed or had a rough time?
Yeah, there's been plenty of those, because I was thinking about it. If you do on average of like say 250 gigs a year, and if you've been doing that for 33-ish years or so, that's a lot of gigs.
Yeah.
And there's definitely been a few clunkers in there. There's no way around that. There's been some that musically have been amazing, but I remember at the time feeling bad because there wasn't many people. There's been a couple times, especially with a couple newer venues, I was trying to like help the owners get them off the ground, and other than a few friends and people from Instagram or Facebook, there was no built-in audience, and that's what they were looking for me to help with, which I did. But it is rough if you are playing like what you were planning on having as a powerhouse set, and there's only 20 people. That's still fine because I'm still gonna play the very best I can. But those sometimes have been rough, and obviously financially, it's hard to pay your band properly if there's only 20 people, and it's way better when there's thousands of people, obviously. So, or my favorite though is probably like average, jazz club size, like 200 to 250 people. Then you have like a proper audience without it being too big, so it's still reasonably intimate, and the energy is good. I can't say that there's been any gigs that bombed, but I would say it is a bummer if you are excited to play, you have your favorite musicians with you, and there's not a lot of people in the audience. So I have had that happen before. I can't say musically anything's ever really train wrecked. That's largely because if it is new music that I'm introducing, I really try my best to run it at sound check with the band, because sometimes I'll write a song on the plane and I'm like, let's try this. And if I feel like it's not going to go really well, I'll just save it for another time, or wait till we do get to do a proper rehearsal. As I've seen some people just fly into stuff and it doesn't go well. And sometimes that's cool because it's a little bit of a trial by fire kind of situation. But I just feel like if people are paying, $100 or $50 to come see me, and that doesn't include traveling, some people fly out to concerts, so I remember talking to my friend Liz, she flew out, got a hotel, bought tickets, you're buying dinner. People in essence are spending $2,000 sometimes to come see me play. And I want to make sure that they're having a really good time and that the music is 110% as good as I can make it.
Yeah.
So I would feel horrible if I was just kind of like, oh, let me just try this out, and then it crashed and burned. Although I know people do that, and it's great. And there's times where things maybe don't always go 100%. But if I feel it's going to be, too risky, I'll usually just save it for the song for another.
Yeah. You just mentioned that you sometimes would write a song on a plane before the gig. How long does it usually take to write a song for you?
For me, and I graduated DePaul University with a degree in classical composition, and I love writing, and I know that's more of a classical music degree, but it fits all, styles of music. And I feel like for myself, because I've written hundreds of songs, I feel like all of my favorite ones, they come together really quickly. I'll hear a melody in my head, and then it's like, oop, I either need to sing it into my phone, I need to jot it down if I have some manuscript paper with me, but having the main melody for me always seems to work the best. And then I can put chords to it. You might put one set of chords to it one day and change them all around the next, and change the groove one day, change the tempo. But once the main melody, if it's in my head, then it usually takes 5 minutes. So I can be sitting on a plane, half asleep, and then like some guy starts coughing behind me or something, and that might be enough for me to be and then I'm like, okay, I've had that happen with the dumbest of things, and it's like a great melody then pops in my head. So that's been a wonderful thing, and many times those come together really quickly. If I'm doing music for, recently did music for this movie driven from my friends Max, Tony, and Gabby Fitzpatrick, and I came up with the kind of themes quickly, but then when we were putting it to the scenes, I had to change it around quite a bit, so that was pretty time consuming. So I will say, if the main melody pops into my head quickly, that means I know it's going to be good and it's not going to take very long. But if I have to kind of tweak something a bunch to get it right, that can be very time consuming. So I would say though most of my favorite songs that I love to play that I've written have taken about 5 minutes to write.
If you had to put a number on it, how many songs do you think you've written?
I think I've written about 350 songs,
Wow.
of which about 150 have been recorded. So hopefully the other 200 or so will be recorded. And hopefully, I kind of feel like if every day I write a song, but maybe it doesn't go anywhere, that's okay. But maybe if one of those per week turns into something, that's 50 songs a year-ish. So that's kind of my goal currently.
Nice. What do you enjoy about the recording process?
I actually perform live, and I'm so happy, and it's like uplifting, and I play with my eyes closed a lot of times, and the night flies by. In a recording situation, I'm kind of like the exact opposite. I love it, but there is more pressure because you have people around you. It's a little more isolated because there isn't the feedback from the crowd. So I prefer live performing to recording, but that's me. I have some friends that prefer to be in the studio than to performing. What I do like about recording very much is seeing what nuances I can get out of the saxophone and how the sound can get tweaked, because when you do a live recording or you're somewhere live, I've had it happen at big festivals where, wow, I'm excited, I'm playing for 100,000 people, and the sound man maybe has your sound like really the highs boosted and it doesn't even sound like me, and then that kind of bums me out. So at least in the studio you have time to tweak a lot of that, maybe change another microphone out. So I do prefer that. I do like that stuff can get honed in a cool way. So that's what I do prefer about the studio. But I always like the energy from people live, and I like kind of being on a tightrope when I'm playing. Like if I play this note, but the bass player plays that note, now it's changed the whole direction of the song. So that's something that I find really exciting about live playing. And you just have to make it work. As where, in the studio, you might be like, okay, well, let's do another take because I think this would be better than that. And then you start maybe over-analyzing it, and that can be a downside where then it kind of strips out some of that spontaneity for at least the type of jazz that I like to create.
How would you describe your sound?
Well, everyone seems to describe it as a Chicago tenor sound, meaning it's big and it's powerful, and but also nuanced, and I'm happy to play very pretty as well. But pretty much my mentor growing up was a saxophone player named Von Freeman, and he'd be over 100 years old now if he was still alive. But we did a two-tenor album together a long time ago, and I always loved his sound. And he was the first, great saxophone player that I was able to hear live when I was about 12 or so at Andy's Jazz Club. And I always loved that big Chicago sound. Gene Ammons, Johnny Griffin, Eddie Harris, those are all kind of in that wheelhouse. I got to know Eddie Harris a little bit because he'd come sit in with me and Charles Erland when we'd be playing the Green Mill in the 90s, shortly before he passed away. His sound is a little more focused, but really wonderful. But there's like an intensity that, those guys all have that I hope I have, I feel I have, and I feel it's just kind of ingrained. So I feel like that's probably the best way to describe my sound. But also another mentor of mine, David Sanborn, he used to hire me to open for him a bit, and I met him also while playing with Charles Erland. That time was the Columbus, Ohio Jazz Festival, and I asked him to do a two-saxophone album a few years ago called Bye Bye Blackbird, and we did. That was really fun, really successful, and I always loved his saxophone sound because it's bluesy, it's on the brighter side, it's alto, as where I play more tenor, but he had his TV show called Night Music, and he would always play like Fridays with Dave Letterman's band, and as a 10-year-old saxophone player getting to see him on TV, I was like, wow, how cool is this? So he inspired me very much, and I definitely have tried to take some of that bluesy element probably without knowing it, and infused it into my playing as well.
Very good. Who would you say are some of your favorite collaborators that you've worked with? Whether maybe they could be another musician, they could be another art form.
Well, my friend Tony Fitzpatrick, that just passed away, because he would do all my album covers, and we would talk about music and what cover might work best with what style of album I've done. So like when he liked birds, so the Bye Bye Blackbird album, really love the bird imagery that he came up with. The Tokyo Number 9, it's like a spider woman. Just like cool images. So that's to me like and I said in a radio interview the other day that he was one of my, I feel like, not only best friends, but like coolest collaborators, because it's visual art collaborating with music. So I really, really appreciated that very much. Musically, my friend Jimmy Chamberlain from the Smashing Pumpkins and I have done so many gigs together and recordings at this point. Randy Brecker, trumpet player, legend. His brother, was Mike Brecker, and we just did another album together after 25 years. But he wrote my letter of recommendation for college and was such a legendary player, and I have admired him for so long, and he's been recommending me for things. I think he helped recommend me for my Yamaha endorsement, so many years ago. So he's just my favorite trumpet player, and anytime I get to play with him, it's so fun. Billy Corgan, when he's asked me to do some stuff, several live TV shows and stuff where I don't really always know what's going to get thrown at me, but it's super fun and keeps me on my toes, so I love that. Same thing happened, it was a long time ago, but I was playing with Seal on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and I wasn't sure what to expect, but they kept me on my toes there, and I was having to play like a clarinet part on the Barry in front of 30 million people or whatever they were watching at home. So I like things that kind of like, I think I mentioned like kind of being on a tightrope. I like feeling like not only challenged, but like an element of kind of like being on my toes, but also like risk or danger perhaps. Nobody's going to die if you play a wrong note, but I probably would never forgive myself because I'm just that way, and the audience would know. So I like being in those situations where you're taking, the last 30 years of your musical training and experiences, and you're putting into that split second, and it's just, to me, that's the most cool.
Would you say there's a time that you felt most dangerous? Or is there a time maybe you went a little too far dangerous?
I think, especially when I was a little bit younger, I think I had the most fun playing, but I might have been taking things a little too far. However, I could, argue that maybe right now I'm not taking things quite far enough, because I've been kind of in a zone where I'm really liking kind of like 60s soul plus jazz, and I've been more in a phase where I want the music to just groove hard and have a special something without it necessarily feeling the need to be avant-garde. So it's just more how my brain goes through phases, and also my heart, because I kind of like let my heart be the final say in these. My brain maybe comes up with the framework, but it's usually more of my heart that's steering the ship musically. And because I'm improvising and I pretty much can sing whatever when I'm playing, sometimes with the more avant-garde stuff like the sax and drums, duos and stuff like that, while I love it, that would maybe be kind of where some people could say maybe it's going too far. But then again, like, I see like the Mark Rothko-esque painting. Is that taking something too far or not far enough? I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's all subjective, I feel. But for myself, I've been happy like the last few years where I feel like there's like a major groove component, and that kind of is kind of coupling what I'm playing. But I do still like to keep it interesting. So especially if the bass player, piano player, guitar player, drummer starts taking it in a little bit different direction, I'm of course going to follow along. And then I don't think it is, going too far, because we're going as a group. If everyone's moving as a unit, as a band, then I don't think you could be taking it too far. If everyone's kind of here and you decide to be over here, that's where arguably I feel like it could be doing something for the sake of doing something, not maybe what the music or the moment is calling for.
That was a great answer. Thank you. One last question. To switch gears quickly, I want to hear what you would say your dream car is, as well as a car brand that you would never own.
That's an interesting question. Well, my wife rented me a Ferrari not long ago. We were in France, in Monaco, and obviously Ferraris are awesome. I had bought a Ferrari Challenge, but it's only for a racetrack and you can't drive it, so my buddy Ben kind of talked me out of that. But maybe at some point getting, I like the Ferrari 308s and Testarossas, because those were the cool classic ones as a kid, and the Ferrari Roma, which is like the new kind of probably mid-priced one. Those are so cool. My wife put down a deposit if it comes on a Lamborghini Urus SUV, which is really cool.
Nice.
But with tariffs and some other stuff, we might have to buy a used one or figure something out. But we currently own a Mercedes AMG SUV that's awesome. So fun. So we don't really need anything better than that. But these other ones are cool. Porsche 911s are always, like, since I was a kid, longtime favorites. So any of those, you just can't argue with. We restored the little silver Porsche 914, which was kind of called the poor man's Porsche at the time, but they're a Targa. It runs amazingly. It feels like you're going 100 miles an hour when you're going 30 miles an hour. So there's a fun factor there of the air-cooled engine behind it just kind of making all this noise, and it feels like you're going really fast. But it's such a fun car, and they have a cult classic following, and my whole life I've loved those. So really happy with that. As far as cars that I would never own, I can't say that there's one in per se that I would never own, but I probably wouldn't own a minivan. I probably would never own a Toyota Prius, even though I know they're very popular. I was in one the other day as an Uber, and I don't know, it just I wasn't vibing with it, although I respect people trying to get good gas mileage and low air pollution. But there's very few cars that I would be like, nah, I'd never own. But those kind of come to mind just as like, But I think having, a cool vintage car, and then, if you're living in a major city, there's Uber and Lyft and all these things. So, I took an Uber over here because I'm like, well, by the time I try to find parking, whatnot, it's rough. So I would say a lot of friends, like a cool old Volkswagen Carmen Ghia or Beetle that's reasonably priced, and then like, using a Uber, that's like an affordable way to have a cool car when you want one. And then like in the winter, probably not going to be the best, and they can rust easy in a Chicago winter, so then take Ubers. So just a couple of quick thoughts.
Yeah, thanks. And before we leave, please feel free to shout out any gigs you have coming up, any albums you have releasing, any work that you want to talk about.
Well, definitely a lot of albums are going to be coming out. The one I mentioned with Randy Brecker, I'm really excited, and we recorded that live at the Green Mill. But we also did a studio recording. I just recorded with Chuchito Valdez, who I've been playing with on and off for 25 years, and so excited about that because he's awesome. Last year, did a recording with Paquito de Rivera, wonderful Cuban saxophonist and clarinetist. So I hope that comes out soon. We did record an album with Randy Ingram on piano, June Smith bass, and Jimmy Chamberlain on the drums at the old CRC just before it was torn down. So hopefully that comes out at some point. With blues legend Jimmy Burns and my friend Dave Ferrero, we recorded last year at Real Sounds. I'm still mixing that. My buddy Fareed Hawk, we did an album together, so I hope that comes out. And I can just keep going because it's just a lot in the can. Recorded a cool one with Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlain that Billy produced from Madame Zuzu's that he owns last year. That was awesome. So hopefully that comes out soon. So yeah, please be on the lookout for those.
Yeah.
And this weekend I'll be at the Green Mill, and then just continuing to travel a bunch. So CatalanoMusic.com is my website, and I appreciate doing this, Enzo.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate you doing this, and I think I speak for everyone when I say I'm super excited for all your work coming out. All that sounds amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Of course.
All right. There we go. Thank you.
Okay.
That was great.
That was great, bro.
Yeah, you had some